And welcome to A Day at the Races Candidate Forum, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Winchester. My name is Susan Woodward, and it is my pleasure to introduce today's Candidate Forum, which features the 3 candidates for 2 vacancies on the Planning Board and the 3 candidates for 2 vacancies on the School Committee. We'd like to give special thanks to those from the public who submitted questions for the forum. We couldn't include every question, but we have tried to address the issues that appeared most often. Before we begin, just a few words about the League of Women Voters. Membership is open to both women and men. Throughout its 98-year history, the League has built a solid reputation for providing fair and enlightening candidate debates for the benefit of voters. Our activities support informed participation in government and increased public understanding of major policy issues. With such programs, recent programs as How to Run for Office in Winchester and Health Benefits of Renewable Energy Choices, which was co-sponsored by the State League and local health-conscious groups last fall. Based on grassroots membership input, the League also seeks to influence public policy through education and advocacy. And now I am pleased to introduce our moderator, Patty Muldoon, a member of the League of Women Voters of Arlington, and also a League-trained moderator. Patty will explain the ground rules and the format for the candidate forum. Patty Muldoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. May I begin by reminding folks to please silence your cell phones, which you have to begin every event with that one. So thank you all for showing up. We are going to have a very condensed format because we have many questions for all 6 of the candidates that we have. First, I'm going to start with brief biographies for each of our candidates. Then they get to do 1-minute opening statements on why they are running. We did a quick secret number opening for the opening statement order. Folks in the public have submitted their questions in advance. The League had a question selection review for fairness and balance and has done their best to make sure that your concerns are represented in these questions. They only have a minute to respond to each question, and there may be a 30-second rebuttal, but no questions from the audience directly tonight. We've already reviewed them. And then again, they'll get a 1-minute closing statement. So beginning with the Winchester Planning Board candidates. We have a 5-member board, each elected for 3-year terms. The Planning Board is responsible for administering the subdivision control law, drafting zoning bylaw revisions, undertaking planning studies, and updating the town's comprehensive master plan. The Planning Board also makes recommendations to the Winchester Zoning Board of Appeals on petitions before the Zoning Board of Appeals for consideration of zoning relief. On March 27th, voters will choose 2 people to serve on the Planning Board. There are 2 openings. And we will begin with Anthony Conte, has been an active town meeting member representing Precinct 2 since 1989. For nearly 10 years, he's been chairman of the Town Meeting Government Regulations Committee. He worked for the U.S. Department of Interior as the Northeast Regional Solicitor for 31 years prior to retiring in 2013. In his private law practice, he has specialized in real property matters, having earned a J.D. degree cum laude from Boston University School of Law in 1973, following graduation from BU's College of Liberal Arts with a BA degree, also cum laude. Before moving to Winchester, he served on the City Council in Revere from 1978 to 1987, where he managed a zoning ordinance revision that led to the revitalization of the Revere Beach area. He's married and is the father of a daughter who graduated from Winchester Public Schools. And next we have Betsy Krieger, who has lived in Winchester for 35 years. She and her husband David raised two children, Michael and Alexis, who attended the Winchester schools. Betsy grew up in Michigan, attended local schools, and later the Interlochen Arts Academy, and then the University of Michigan, majoring in French and Russian. After moving to Winchester, she obtained a Master of Science in Accountancy from Bentley College and spent most of her career in banking and financial reporting. Currently semi-retired, she works with community organizations in Winchester, including the Morocco School Parents Association, Community Schools Association, the Winchester Historical Society, and the ENCA Society. She's a 25-year town meeting member, served 6 years on the Finance Committee, including 1 year as the chairman, the Winchester Board of Selectmen from 1999 to 2005, including being chair 2001 to 2002. Since 2006, she has served on the Winchester Planning Board, chairing it from 2013 to 2017. In her final term, she hopes to complete work on Winchester's master plan. Other plans include following the Red Sox and cheering them on. Maureen Meister, at the end of the table, brings more than 3 decades of relevant professional and volunteer experience to the position. She has published 4 books and dozens of articles about the architecture of our region and the buildings of Winchester. As an educator in Department of Art and Architectural History, she's taught at Boston area universities, including Tufts, Northeastern, and Lesley. As a volunteer member in Winchester Town Government, she served on the Planning Board, the Design Review Committee, and the Historical Commission. She's chaired the Planning Board and the Historical Commission. Maureen and her husband, David Fagenbaum, moved to Winchester in 1982. They have 2 grown sons, both graduates of the Winchester Public Schools. Maureen holds an undergraduate degree from Mount Holyoke College and a PhD in the history of art and architecture from Brown University. So now we will move to opening statements. And we will begin with Ms. Krieger, please. 1 minute.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for taking some time out of this beautiful afternoon to be here. I'm pleased to be running again to continue my service to Winchester on the Planning Board. And why is it important? Well, it's important to me because the Planning Board actually, in its actions, it impacts all of us by ensuring that community balance is achieved. Neighborhood character is maintained and improved, and business development is encouraged and retained. We know Winchester is a beautiful community of tree-lined streets, amenable neighborhoods, thriving downtown, characterized by its wonderful historic character. Retaining that balance is important to business and residents alike. Through zoning and working closely with other boards and commissions, the Planning Board works to balance the needs of both business and neighborhoods alike. Our largest and most recent major accomplishment is the rezoning of our downtown to allow mixed-use development.
Thank you. Okay, now moving to Mr. Conti.
Thank you. I'm running for the Planning Board because I want to give something back to the community that has been my home and my family's home for the last 3 decades. I want Winchester to be able to grow, to have a future, so that others may enjoy the same benefits that my family has enjoyed these many years. And that includes an environment that fosters collaboration among all constituent elements, including homeowners, public officials, business interests, and the builders who will help to shape our future. I want to use my legal background in real property law and years of actual practical experience as a city councilor dealing with zoning issues, to implement the town's planning guidelines and zoning bylaws. My prior life experience, coupled with my legal background, provides me with the insights needed to make balanced decisions required as a member of the planning board. I want to see the town thoughtfully address the challenges that are presented by state laws which do not properly address the burdens placed on communities like Winchester. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Meister.
Thank you. The planning board benefits from members with three particular skills. First, the ability to visualize. The second is the ability to translate the visual into written documents. And finally, the ability to collaborate with others. My career as an art and architectural historian supports my work on the board. And with my 30 years of service on town boards, I've demonstrated my ability to work with others. I would welcome the opportunity to continue serving the town for 3 more years. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move to the question and answer section, which candidates haven't seen the questions in advance, which were solicited from you, the public. They will be responding in alphabetical order and will keep rotating through. Responses are 1 minute each. Rebuttals 30 seconds. I might ask follow-up questions, but probably not because we're on a fairly tight timeline. We expect about 7 questions for the planning board. So beginning with candidate Conte, what ideas do you have for expanding Winchester's commercial tax base? You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, we have to recognize that Winchester collects about 95% of its real estate taxes from homeowners. And the only way to keep Winchester affordable to our residents is to attract more commercial property. The planning board can do that by providing incentives in zoning. For example, by reducing parking requirements or allowing greater floor area ratios to buildings in certain districts, in commercial districts we're talking about. That's the way to encourage development in our downtown area. The planning board last year adopted some changes in our central business district which should help to encourage additional commercial development that will increase commercial property tax revenues.
And Ms. Krieger?
Well, thank you for that layup, Mr. Conte. Indeed, yes. A couple of years ago, what we were able to accomplish is to take some zoning provisions in our downtown which had not allowed for any residential development in our central business district, and to actually move that to a mixed-use development model in which we would have stores and other businesses on the ground floor, and then also allow for residential housing up above. We felt that this was a wise and good way, and in a considered way, to actually bring more activity to the downtown and encourage continued life and business activity for the commercial enterprises in town.
Ms. Meister?
I could amplify on what Betsy said. Certainly, the planning board was very focused on the town center as the appropriate place for rezoning, and this has been done. At the same time, I think it's important to say that we are elected to serve the community, and there certainly have been areas in the community where people have looked at what were industrial zoned parts of town and have found that those adjacencies have been really difficult. And in fact, town meeting, and it wasn't the planning board, it was the town meeting, rezoned a parcel that was a rug cleaning operation for many, many years because of its adjacency to the it was surrounded by residential neighborhoods. So there are really very few opportunities. The board is respectful of the places where it wouldn't have negative impact on other neighbors, but we also are responding to our community. That's our role. Thank you.
I'd like to offer the candidates, and if one person does, you all have that opportunity. Do you want to expand? I didn't hear anything to rebut, but on that, or do you want to go to the next question?
Next question.
Next question?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. What role should the planning board have in addressing the shortage of affordable housing? And we'll begin with Ms. Krieger.
Well, one of the real problems that we do face is that we do have real limitations right now, just in terms of what we have available for affordable housing. And as a consequence of that, we have had multiple 40B developers come in wanting to build projects, frankly, that might be very inappropriate in their locations. Now, as we said, there are areas, particularly in the downtown there toward the train station, where actually they would be ideal because you'd have the adjacency to transportation and services. And that's what we would really be looking for. But until we can manage to work on that, we're on a housing plan, housing production plan that is required by state law when we're working on that, and I'm part of that group. So we are moving on in that effort.
Ms. Meister?
And again, Betsy and I certainly, as we sit together on the board, are pretty much going to want to say the same things. The housing production plan is an opportunity for Winchester to really figure out where we can put more affordable housing without it being out of scale and inappropriate in where it lands. So that's the main effort, an opportunity for the planning board. Again, we don't handle the zoning, so that's the town meetings, but we do make recommendations. We also did, as you've already heard, present to town meeting the rezoning for the Center Business District, and in that location there are already development proposals moving forward. We will probably take some active role in in some construction on the Waterfield parking lot, and there too there should be some affordable houses that are units that are created. So I think that's probably enough for now. Thank you.
Mr. Conti?
Well, the housing production, I'm a little concerned about the proposed housing production plan in that a few days ago at town meeting, we had a special town meeting, one of the selectmen mentioned that the housing production plan might produce 70 or 80 additional units a year. And the effect of that over a period of time is to create essentially what the 40B projects that have been proposed would do. If you have 70 or 80 units in 4 or 5 years, you've got over 300 additional units. And so we have to be very careful when considering the burden that additional residential development will place on our infrastructure and our school system in particular. So I'm very concerned about that we may be adopting something that's going to achieve what we've been trying to avoid, namely large-scale development that places additional burdens on our limited tax base.
Ms. Greger, comment?
Well, I think that the real challenge, well, it is a real challenge.
Can we hear?
Can you hear? Okay. Well, as Mr. Conti has pointed out, I mean, that is a very real and genuine challenge, and we will continue to have 40B proposals come before us. There's no question. But, I think that we need to try and identify those spots where we may be able to fit in more affordable units, perhaps on a 1 or a 2 basis in buildings. We've already taken some responsibility for doing that on the planning board currently. If you look at our it is allowed now, and in fact some of that is actually required under our current zoning change. So, one can only do what one can do, but we're trying.
Ms. Meister?
The state law, which is Chapter 40B, is going to be, as long as it's there, we're going to be having to address it. The developers have this trump card, and these developments can go forward with very little discretion on the part of Winchester. So it's, are we going to try to figure out where the best place is for these units to land, or are we going to simply let the developers keep coming at us, which is what's happening right now? It's not a great scenario for Winchester. Totally understood.
Mr. Conti, last word.
Well, we're in a difficult situation. There's no question. We have only 1.9% affordable, according to what the state defines as affordable, which basically boils down to subsidized developments. And the only thing that we have in our favor, frankly, is that there's very little developable land that is appropriate for housing. So there's a limit to where 40B projects can be placed. For example, the most imposing one that is up on Holton Street, which is a very difficult area and totally inappropriate for housing development. So there's not a lot of land available, fortunately.
Thank you. Moving on. The master plan for Winchester is a work in progress. What is its current status and your take on it? Beginning with Ms. Meister.
We have a committee that's been organized, and we've been meeting on the master plan steering committee. It includes representatives from every precinct in the town meeting and a couple other town agencies. And we are way behind as a town where we should be in comparison with other communities, in that the last complete master plan addressing all the various areas that are spelled out in Mass General Law, the last one that was done was 1953, so it's time to pull that together. Wait, I gotta stop. That was 60 seconds? Oh. I'm totally stumped. I can read. It said stop. No, sorry. No, I'll stop. Others will pick up. But the Master Plan Steering Committee is meeting, and they're intending to address all of the various areas that are spelled out in the plan. The idea is to reconcile conflicting objectives, which include things like maintaining open space and building more housing. So that's the opportunities for constructing housing. So those are some of the conflicts that would be pulled together. Commercial development, all of that comes together in a master plan that includes both recommendations for new bylaws in town that could help advance the master plan, as well as a map that would show where exactly these things would land. Thank you.
Mr. Conte?
Rather than repeat what Ms. Meister has very eloquently described as the status of the master plan, I will provide additional time for more questions, really. I think she did a great job in explaining what the master plan process is.
Indeed. And I would like to point out, actually from the sort of preliminary first piece of it that we did, that came out in 2010 and was approved by the town meeting, that actually the development in the downtown and the change in the zoning there was something that was really called out for the center business district. So the master plan really has some real impact in terms of determining what we actually allow and what changes may be required in the zoning bylaw in order to accomplish that broader vision.
Thank you. Think we can move on? Yeah. What suggestions do you have to regulate new construction that may be non-conforming with existing neighborhoods? Again, begin with Mr. Conte.
Well, our zoning bylaw is very comprehensive, and while there's no perfect set of rules, I think what we have does a pretty good job at providing for appropriate development in our residential areas. Any new developments have to comply with the existing requirements, and I think that we all are pretty happy. We're all residents here. We all moved here for a reason, and our community has been pretty well developed, and I have pretty good confidence in the standards that we have established. So I'm pretty happy with the standards that we have right now.
Ms. Krager, do you have suggestions to regulate new construction that may be non-conforming with the current neighborhoods?
Well, you know, as Mr. Conte has well said, I mean, if new proposals come in, they must conform to the current zoning. So what we have there by way of height requirements and setbacks, all of those things that really sort of create the overall structure of our neighborhoods, those are all included in our current zoning. And if new developments come in, proposals come in, you know, they will have to comply with that. It's fairly straightforward on that point.
Ms. Meister.
They've passed several new regulations, new rules in the past couple of years that have helped a lot. And so what we're getting now is the opportunity, especially with very large houses that are being built by the developers, that after they hit a certain size, they have to go through site plan review. And that's, I think, heading in the right direction. And it goes over to the zoning board, and the zoning board can look at it with, as under our new zoning bylaw, substantial input from the Design Review Committee, Historical Commission when relevant, and the Planning Board. And that's, I think, we've seen that work already in several examples, and expect that it's more getting this process a little bit more sure-footed, a little bit more smoothing out the process. And again, these are recent zoning bylaw changes that are in effect, but we're just kind of getting everybody together to make those reviews effective. So thank you.
Nobody needs to add?
Very good.
What improvements would you like to see for North Main Street? Beginning with Ms. Kreger.
Okay. Well, North Main Street actually is an area, it's, you know, it's been through some kind of rough times lately. And it's difficult because it is kind of open there. And, you know, what we're finding more and more as a neighborhood, in that neighborhood, you're finding that there's a lot of sort of, well, people feel kind of encroached upon just because much larger homes have come in and been built up in that area. However, it's one of those things where with the new zoning, some of the new zoning requirements, that some of that is getting reined in, so that's a plus. However, I think that one of the things we do need to work on is really having an overall plan for North Main Street as we are driving along to ensure that that street can have the mixed-use development, bring some of the zoning that we have in the downtown perhaps up, be able to have more mixed use there, and as well, just right on the street itself, and then be able to actually have some more street amenities as well. So we can have, you know, more trees, you know, I'm the tree lady, so more trees, please. And, you know, perhaps some other amenities such as, you know, seating, for example, outdoor seating and so forth, that sort of thing.
Thank you. Ms. Meister.
When my husband and I moved to Winchester in the early 1980s, the town had just gotten a grant or several grants to do some real, for lack of a better term, beautification work in the town center. Much of what you think of or know today, if you haven't lived here for like since the early 80s, you wouldn't know how different it was. But it paid for the sidewalks. It created different, they're called neck downs or bulbs or whatever on the intersections to allow you to cross the street more easily. So that whole seating area across from where's Starbucks today, all of that was done during the early 80s. It was a landscape architect who was involved, who was hired to come up with that design. So there could certainly be again, now we've got our planners really up and running and we're in the position to apply for state money to rebuild North Main Street. It is a state route and work on some beautification projects there. It's definitely doable and the money's there. But we have to, it's our one staff person who's working so hard, but to direct them in that direction and we could achieve something with that. Thank you.
And Mr. Conti.
Well, there is a limited potential in right along Main Street itself for some mixed-use development and additional commercial property in that location. However, we've got to be a little concerned. I know, as coming from the north side of town, there is the perception that that the north end of town gets certain projects that nobody else wants in town, and we have to be concerned about the fact that we are not putting an undue burden on one section of town as opposed to others, and that's something that I would bear very close attention to be concerned that the burdens of development are evenly spaced across town and not concentrated in one area.
Follow-up? Okay. What is your vision for improved parking in Winchester Center, beginning with Ms. Meister?
Oh, I get the parking question.
Hey, we all get it.
Actually, the parking question goes to the selectmen, so our select board perhaps in a few more weeks. But it really is something that the planning board participates, but it's an ongoing question of where to go and how to put it's really fine-grained. So I suppose one long-term opportunity would be if we see the development that's now possible in the center business district, that some of that redevelopment will come with parking, and meaning Waterfield Lot may take some, their North Main Street, if parcels are assembled and new construction goes in, that may also include some additional parking that would be either inside the structure or behind the structure. That's about it. Thank you.
Mr. Conti, your vision for improved parking in the center?
Well, as has been indicated, the parking is really only in the sense of what our parking requirements are under our zoning bylaw is the only influence that the planning board really has in that. It's really selectmen who have much more to say than the planning board on that aspect. But certainly any development is going to have appropriate parking. In the downtown area, it cries out for a parking structure of some kind so that we can generate more business for the small businesses in that area. But again, that's a problem because parking is expensive. Parking structures don't build themselves. They are expensive, and it is a significant problem. We have very limited parking available in the downtown area.
Ms. Kreger.
Well, Mr. Conti, you do have that nailed. I mean, it really is a problem because parking is expensive. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars per parking space to be built. That being said, as we were in the process of doing the rezoning in the downtown, we did take some effort to try and identify where there might be some potentiality of being able to actually have a parking structure, which hopefully would ease some of that. But it's very, very difficult to be able to fund such development, and hopefully you could do it within a project where the developer would actually be coming in and picking some of that up. But as with everything, when we're downtown and we're trying to do those projects, it's a collaborative process in terms of trying to work within the existing zoning, doing what we can do to preserve our neighborhoods and what we have in our downtown and keep it as beautiful and lovely as it is, but still being able to, and perhaps being able to find some other areas, but I'm having a hard time thinking of where else we would put a large parking structure, let's put it that way.
Further comments?
I would add that when I'd say the planning board drafted and then put to the town meeting that voted the new center business district zoning, that we did reduce the parking requirement. We did that in the center for units that are built in the center business district. So we are cognizant of the fact that we don't want to just force more cars and structure into the town center than necessary. And certainly in the center there with the commuter rail there, and just people with young people especially who are biking, that we felt that we could lessen the parking requirement per unit.
Other comments? Follow-up? Okay.
Oh.
Betsy?
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, one last thing. I just wanted to mention that, of course, the center train station is scheduled to be rebuilt fairly soon. It's coming along within a year or so. So it's possible, with that development happening, it's possible that we may be able to get, a structure in somehow. But it's always going to be a challenge, no question, because we are very limited in terms of space. It's a question of where to put it.
Yeah, Arlington shares your problems on that one. Serving on the planning board is a position that requires extensive collaboration with Winchester constituents, elected leaderships, and the business community. Please describe your past experiences collaborating in this manner, beginning with our candidate, Conte.
Well, I had 10 years as a city councilor in a more urbanized area, and I can tell you that collaboration is essential, and I've walked the walk, believe me. I've had innumerable meetings with neighborhood groups, business groups, developers. It's part of the job. City councilors have a much broader authority than selectmen do. They are the legislative body of a community, of a city, and I had extensive experience in dealing with neighborhood groups and developers and on many zoning issues. So I've done it all.
Candidate Kreger.
Yes, well, needless to say, on the planning board, we often work very collaboratively with any number of boards and committees. Obviously, with the Board of Selectmen, we work closely with them. We work with the Historical Commission. We work with Design Review. We do a lot of collaborative work in a lot of what we do, both when we're putting together zoning proposals, as well as in terms of the review of petitions that we have for the ZBA. So we really work collaboratively both together within our board, and I think, generally speaking, I think we work very effectively together. And as I said, with other boards and committees as well. And the public.
And the public.
And the
Candidate Meister, please.
When I was chairman of the planning board, there had never been joint meetings with the Board of Selectmen, and I initiated that whole process. So we met, in fact, we wanted to get out of town hall entirely, but in a public posted place, and we met in the library. And it was terrific, and I think it was a turning point. So at that time, we were all around the table. The chair of the, at that time, it was Carl Friesel, who was chair of the Board of Selectmen, and myself, and we co-chaired these meetings, going back and forth who ran the meeting. And so working together is something that's to me, has to happen if government's going to work at all. But beyond that, in our recent zoning that you've been hearing about, we brought in members of the Design Review Committee and Historical Commission and the ZBA at different times and asked for their input to understand what, or for us to understand what they thought of these new zoning proposals. And so we're working with them on a regular basis. Thank you.
And looking forward, what do you see as your primary cause that you want to champion as a member of the planning board, and why? Beginning with Ms. Kreger.
Well, we still have big challenges facing us. Among them, really, I think first and foremost, really is developing the housing production plan. And to be able to do that, to come up with solutions for incremental, affordable housing in our community. Because, as we've mentioned before, otherwise these 40B projects are just going to keep coming at us, and they may be put in places that really are not appropriate. We need to be able to work on that, to be able to provide housing, and to be able to make Winchester a more diverse community.
Ms. Meister?
The master plan, last full plan done in 1953. So it's time to pull all those pieces together, work with our representatives from the town meeting and get that plan drafted out there in front of all of you and figure out what the next steps are. Again, with all the different areas that are in the master plan, figure out how to reconcile those objectives. Thank you.
Huzzah, huzzah.
Mr. Conte, your primary cause.
Well, encouraging more commercial development where appropriate in the town to generate additional revenues to take some of the burden off residential property owners. I recognize that there's unfortunately very limited potential for that in town, but we have to provide incentives to encourage more commercial development. I'm also concerned about the housing production plan to ensure that it doesn't give us what over a short term what the 40B projects are threatening to do in an even shorter period of time. So I think we have a very difficult balancing act to achieve here. It's not going to be simple. And anybody who tells you that it's simple is mistaken, and I don't think any of us would tell you that.
Ms. Kreger, do you want to take 30 seconds to expand on your goal?
Well, as I said, part of it is being able to address those. I'm sorry. Part of that is really being able to address the threats of those 40Bs that come at us really sporadically, but with increasing frequency. And it is a genuine challenge because every time we do, we have to engineer people, put people together, and try to find ways in which we can make sure that development takes place in a rational way that makes sense for Winchester, that we're dealing with our business as well, that we keep continuing to work with our neighborhoods also.
Ms. Meister, 30 seconds?
No, I'm all set. Thank
and
you.
Mr. Conte?
All set.
Okay, thank you all. We are going to move into the closing statements for the planning board candidates, and that will be in the reverse order of their opening statements. And we will start with Ms. Meister.
Thank you.
1 minute.
So I ask the voters to consider my track record. I'm known for the values that I've championed while serving on the Historical Commission, the Design Review Committee, and the Planning Board. With the intensity of development that we're experiencing in our beautiful neighborhoods and town center, Winchester needs a planning board that will guide the changes with care. I would be honored to receive your vote on March 27th. Thank you.
Mr. Conte.
As a resident for 3 decades, I've been privileged to serve Winchester as a town meeting member for 29 years, during which time we've had to address many serious issues. I feel fortunate to have raised my family in Winchester. We're faced with a a number of important challenges for our town that we have to address in the coming years. We must implement the Central Business District bylaw to encourage small business growth and generate additional revenue. We must address affordable housing for our seniors, considering downsizing, and the demands for state laws which fail to consider the burdens they place on towns. These items must be implemented in the master plan to preserve the quality and character of the town we call home. I know the importance of planning. I will bring a perspective of a lawyer who has dealt with real property issues throughout my career and my experience as a city councilor dealing with zoning issues. I'll use my experience working with clients and municipal departments to help build a better community. I would be receptive and professional to ensure that decisions that are made are fair and equitable for the community as a whole. On Tuesday, March 27th, I would be honored to have your vote for Planning Board. Thank you.
And Ms. Krager, please.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for staying with us for this conversation about development and planning in Winchester. I believe that developing the policy for land use, in particularly zoning, calls for collaboration and discussion. As the Planning Board works to complete the master plan, it must work with the collaboration of citizens, professional staff, and public boards, commissions, and committees. Hearing all sides of an issue may create conflict at times, but it allows for a better understanding of potential impacts of policy decisions on land use. Finding solutions to that process also means checking back with citizens and businesses multiple times to ensure that proposed solutions do not negatively impact the community, once again, finding balance. I'm proud to have worked on the Center Business District, including design work for the Center train station, the housing policy group that is now doing work, and retention of our town's arboreal character, that's trees. Creating understanding and communicating with the public is the greatest challenge for the board. I've been able with the board to significantly improve that process, I believe, but it will always be a challenge. It also allows for the development of policy discussions that move Winchester forward in a way that positively impacts the lives of its citizens and businesses. I would greatly appreciate one of your votes for Planning Board.
And we want to thank all three Planning Board candidates. Winchester only gets to choose two of them, but there you have all three. Thank you. And now we'll have a very brief break in time for the school committee candidates to come up. We now have the candidates for school committee before you. The Winchester School Committee consists of 5 members elected for 3-year terms. Its duties include establishing goals and policies for the Winchester school system, appointing the superintendent of the Winchester Public Schools, making rules and regulations for the administration and management of the schools, review and approval of the school system annual budget, and negotiating all contracts with the Winchester Educational Association. On March 27th, voters will fill 2 vacancies on the school committee, each for 3-year terms. So let me present you with the biographies that the candidates have submitted. Zena Marchant was born in Lebanon and immigrated to Chicago when she was 7. Zena and Jason have 2 boys attending Lynch Elementary. Jason works in information security. Zena has a strong record of civic engagement as an attorney. As a fellow in the Governor's Office of Education and Workforce Development, she worked on legislation and convened stakeholders around issues such as teacher training. Zena advocated for migrant workers through the Legal Assistance Foundation and represented indigent clients in family law matters. Zena served as Director of Elections for a county and a Director of IT, Information Technologies, for a court system. Locally, Zena is active with the Lynch Parents Association, Winchester Special Education Parent Advisory Council, Winchester Multicultural Network, Friends of Winchester Library, and Winchester for Peace. Zena organized food drives for some of the 4,000 homeless Boston school children and is similarly concerned about food insecurity here in Winchester. Her priorities as a school committee member include modernizing the curriculum to keep pace with high-performing peer districts, managing growth through disciplined financial planning, and supporting special education. Dr. Karina Money holds a doctorate in education and is a student success expert in the areas of academic achievement and student retention. She has taught at a number of institutions in the Boston area over the past 10 years, where she developed and implemented curriculum for the first-year student success and retention and advised students on academic success and career goals. Dr. Money is a noted author and speaker on veterans returning to higher education to pursue civilian careers. Dr. Money and her husband moved to Winchester in 2012 to raise their family and for the reputable school system. She is the proud mother of a 9-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. She has volunteered her time in the community by serving as room mother at Lynch for 4 years and coaching sandlot soccer. As a parent, Dr. Money has championed the rehabilitation of Winchester Elementary School facilities, pursuing and successfully obtaining from the State Board of Health the first complete IAQ test at Lynch in nearly 2 decades. Brian Vernalia is a lifelong resident of Winchester. Brian actively serves on the Finance, Capital Planning, and Energy Management committees. In addition, Brian is a member of town meeting. His wife of 22 years, Shannon, is a pediatrician at MGH. Brian's 2 daughters, Marina and Rebecca, both attended Lincoln Elementary School and are now at Winchester High and McCall, respectively. Brian has volunteered in the schools as the Lincoln 5th grade co-chair and field day co-chair, and as the McCall Parents Association co-president. In addition, Brian has served as an elected member of the Lincoln, McCall, and High School Improvement Councils. Brian has long been an active volunteer in the Girl Scouts. A graduate of Winchester High School, he earned his bachelor's degree in applied mathematics at Harvard College, followed by a Master's of Science from Princeton University and a PhD from Tufts University in chemical engineering. Those are your 3 candidates, and now we will move to their opening statements, beginning with Ms. Money. You have 1 minute.
Good afternoon. I want to thank first the League of Women Voters, which has offered us this opportunity to meet all the candidates before you today. We are much more than just names next to a ballot checkbox. We are neighbors. Our children play on the same sports teams. We attend the same dance recitals to cheer on our kids. And most importantly, our children attend the same schools. I am here for the very reason that all of you are here today, and it is for our children. As a mother of 2 children, 1 in elementary school and 1 that will be going to elementary school in 2 years, I, like you, have a vested interest in seeing Winchester Public Schools be the best they can possibly be. As an educational professional with over a decade of experience, I know I can make a difference and offer a professional perspective that has long been overdue, and that is why I'm running for school committee. If elected, I will be the only active educator to serve on this committee, something that has been lacking for many years, and I ask for your support.
Thank you. Mr. Vernalia.
Hello, my name is Brian Vernalia. I'm excited to tell you why I'm running for school committee. I'm the parent of 2 amazing young women thriving in our schools. They're being taught how to critically assess problems, how to digest complicated literature, how to explore their creativity, how to work as a team, and so much more. When they leave high school, I am certain they will be prepared for the rigor of college and life beyond. But despite our great success, many of our students are overstressed, overscheduled, overworked to the point of being unwell. The breadth of our curriculum lags behind many of our peer school districts. 2 of our school facilities are in desperate need of renovation, and the 3rd is on its way to expansion to meet growing enrollment. And very importantly, our school funding struggles to keep up with real need. If the solutions to the problems we face were easy, they would have been enacted long ago. If elected, I hope to utilize the very tools our children are being taught today to address the issues that arise. Critically assess the problems, digest the available literature, explore creative solutions, and work as a team to implement them. I don't promise to have every answer today, but I pledge to work together for the common good of all our children. Thank you.
And Ms. Michon.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters of Winchester for giving us this opportunity, and thank you to the audience for being here. Participating in this forum reinforces the importance of civic engagement. I have a long record of being civically engaged, one of my favorite being my role as door greeter at Lynch. This has been an amazing experience because it gave me a real-time view of the compassion, dedication, and skill of our teachers and administrators. I saw firsthand why Winchester schools are exceptional. I decided to run for school committee to use my advocacy skills to help our community fulfill the potential of all of our students. My priorities include modernizing the curriculum to encompass more perspectives and ensure accuracy, while also teaching compassion and critical thinking, managing growth in a fiscally responsible manner, and supporting early identification of special needs, transparency in the IEP process, and the hiring of an out-of-district coordinator to create more consistency for families and more data analysis support. Thank you for your support on March 27th.
Thank you. And now we're going to move into the question and answer section. Candidates haven't seen the questions in advance. The questions were solicited from you, the public. They will respond in alphabetical order, and the order will rotate through each set of questions. Everyone gets 1 minute, and if we need rebuttals, those will be 30 seconds. I might follow up if it seems appropriate. And we have maybe 6 or 7 questions in the time we have. So we're using basically the same format we just did. Our first question goes beginning with Ms. Marchant. What skills do you bring from your professional or volunteer experience that will be especially helpful to the school committee?
I have extensive experience not only in being a volunteer within many of our local groups, such as the Winchester Multicultural Network, our Lynch Parents Association, but I also have the experience in education to be an effective member of the school committee. When I worked in education policy under the Illinois Governor's Office, we collaborated not only with unions, but also teachers, administrators, parents. We heard from students directly. All of that, including my desire for compassionate, for our students to learn compassion and critical thinking, make me a good candidate for school committee.
Thank you. And Ms. Money, thank you.
I think all of the people sitting up here bring the perspective of parents. We all have kids in the school system. We all want what's best for our children. I am the only candidate that's sitting up here that brings in the perspective of a working professional educator. As an educator, I have taught thousands of students over the years. I have worked individually with students of all ages in helping them learn their learning style and apply that to succeed in the classroom. I have worked with high school students to help them figure out their major before they go into college, and I have worked with groups of all kinds of students. I have spoken and advocated for my students over the last 10 years, and I believe that in order to have balance on our school committee, we need the voice of a professional working educator that can apply their knowledge of research and practice and add the balance that is so desperately needed on our current committee.
And Mr. Vanalia.
As an engineer by training, I always bring a data-driven approach to everything I do. So any problem that I look at, I always look at the data. I always try to bring in all the stakeholders and work together to try to find a solution. But more generally, as a town volunteer for many years, I think one of the things I bring into this would be relationships, the relationships with the people that I've gotten to know over the years. Those would be working with the superintendent, working with the town manager and the assistant town manager. I sit on a committee that the assistant town manager sits on. Working with Jay Gill, Pete Lawson, people over at the DPW office, working with the librarians, working with the director of the library, working with Mike Day and Jason Lewis. So I think one of the things that I hope I bring is, having served on the finance committee now for 5 years, that I've had these relationships that I've been able to build, and I've built trust there so that on day one, I already have these people who know where I stand, who know how I work, and I can hopefully bring about productivity right away. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to skip the rebuttal, but if at any point you want to do a rebuttal and I have skipped it, just let me know. Moving on. A number of students throughout our district participate in individualized education programs, or IEPs, developed to ensure special learning needs are met. What are your views on the effectiveness of these programs? Beginning with Dr. Money.
I believe that Winchester does an excellent job in supporting our special education population. I think that we provide the support that is necessary, and we are way ahead in supporting our special needs students. As an educator, I have witnessed firsthand that students come ill-equipped to college. I believe that Winchester needs to provide a world-class education with a focus on skills needed in the 21st century. For that, I believe that we need more funding for STEM, and we need a gifted and talented program that would start at the elementary level and beyond, so that we are able to serve all our children.
And just in the hope of avoiding acronyms, could you define STEM?
Science, technology, education, math.
Did you hear that? No, try that again.
Science, technology, education, math.
Thank you. That may come up again. Mr. Vernalia.
This question was about IEPs, if I recall. Yes.
Yes.
So every student in Winchester deserves a first-class education, whether they're on an IEP, whether they're on a 504, whether they're just squarely in general education. And we've certainly been, as a district, working to improve the education for everyone. One of the initiatives that started a number of years ago was co-teaching, where we have special education teachers working hand in hand with the regular education teachers. That's been a great success. One of the things that's happened since I've been running is parents have been reaching out to me, telling me the issues that they see. They have been reaching out to me and saying that the IEP process is very complicated, it's very cumbersome, and they've been reaching out to me, telling me that sometimes the IEPs that have been written for the children are not being properly followed. What I see is a district doing a great job, but we can always do better. Anytime a parent opens up to you like that and tells you the issues that they have, it's something that certainly I think we should look into. And again, every student deserves a first-class education, IEP or not.
Thank you. Ms. Marchant.
I am proud to serve on the Winchester Parent Advisory Council, which is working with the district to bring our voices to in response to some of the things we've heard from parents of special education students. The IEP process has to become more transparent. One of the things that Brian stated earlier about data analysis is very key. We can first hire an out-of-district coordinator to make our processes more effective and to create continuity for parents with out-of-district placement. That coordinator role can also be effective as that person reviews all IEPs to determine in-district or out-of-district placement what the data shows. We can track whether or not IEP goals are being met. So we need to continue the dialogue as spearheaded by the Winchester Parent Advisory Council to ensure that we are meeting those goals and that the process is transparent.
Dr. Money? Do you want to take any more time?
No, I'm
Okay.
good.
No?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. What changes should be made to improve safety in the Winchester schools? A very timely question. We'll begin with Mr. Vernalia.
So, as we saw from the tragic events in Florida and most recently in Winchester ourselves, no community, no matter how safe we think we are, is truly safe from all possible acts that can take place. What we need to keep on doing is our highest priority has to be to keep our children safe, but we also have to look at what are the risks that our children face. At this time, if you look at preteen and teen mortality, accidents and suicide come well before homicide, and we need to be looking at all three of those areas. We need to be looking at safety in the schools, but safety of our students. There are not anxiety and stress is pushing them, and that results in kids who make poor choices. Kids who make poor choices may drive when it's not safe to drive. They may take drugs or drink alcohol when it wouldn't be a good idea, and they may choose to take their own lives. So this is something that we need to be looking at, not just safety in sort of the strictest sense.
Ms. Marchant.
I first want to commend our district for the emergency response teams that we have at each building. They work very hard and meet regularly to ensure that safety protocols are being followed, that doors are locked, that visitors are checking in the office and wearing badges. We need to support them with more training and more open dialogue with other town entities such as the police and the select board. One of the things that I applaud our select board is for requesting or for planning a comprehensive evaluation of security with the primary focus being our schools. But the broader issue is mental health. That is not just a school issue. That is a community-wide issue. We need to come together with school personnel and the police and other experts in mental health to ensure that we are figuring out how to best pull in resources to meet the needs of our citizens struggling with mental health issues.
And Dr. Money.
I think that I agree with parts of what both of the other candidates have said. Absolutely, mental health is a major factor for the well-being of our students. Absolutely, we need to address these facts. However, I think it is important to understand the reality of the world we live in. And I believe that we need to put the safety of the children of Winchester at the very top of our priority list. And I do not believe that the current safety factors that we have in our schools, which require ringing a doorbell and anybody can walk in, is good enough. I think this is a complex issue, and I think that what we need to do is consult out and hire school safety risk assessment professionals to come into all our buildings and assess our buildings and give us recommendations of what we can do to make our children safe today.
This being an issue that's so near to Winchester's hearts as well as the rest of the country, I'm going to give all of you up to a minute to expand on your concerns around this issue. Coming back to Mr. Vanalia.
So one thing that we are very fortunate to have at the high school level is the school resource officer, Sergeant Daniel Paranek. Officer Paranek and I actually were Boy Scouts together. He's deep in the community. He's served here for a long time. He knows the students. He is just the kind of person that we need in town to be keeping our students safe. So I say that sort of proactively, preventively, I suppose, to say what do we want as far as more security. We can start putting in more guards. We can start putting metal detectors. We can go down a road of that sort, which is going to result in our children being more uptight, more anxious, and it's going to go back to the other risks that I mentioned up front. So I think we need to be really careful when we look at what we want to do to make our schools safe, because the only truly safe school will become a prison, and that's not what we want for our children. So I guess what I'm saying is that we need to have a community discussion about how we want to do this.
Thank you. Ms. Marchant.
Yes, it is a complex issue, but just like Brian just stated, we don't want our children to be growing up in a world that just creates more trauma with proactive measures. That doesn't help our students maintain a healthy wellness. We have a good relationship in our community between the school district and our safety personnel, and we need to maintain that. But there are other things we can do, such as bringing in training programs that help our first responders know how to handle our students with special needs. There was something that came out of the Parkland incident where we learned of a training program being developed But the community has to look at this on a broader level. It can't be just the school district issue. The incident in Winchester, unfortunately, occurred, but it was not on school property, and it was not between students. We don't want to be reactive in such a strong manner without being thoughtful about what it's going to look like and the safety of our students.
And Dr. Money.
I think it's interesting to note that we have not lost a child to a school fire in 50 years. And one of those reasons is because we have fire drills. Students know what to do in case of an emergency and a fire, and they know to find an exit. I think that I disagree that, adding security would cause anxiety or turn schools into prison. Adding security would be a safety guard to protect our children and frankly keep them alive in the event of tragedy. I don't know what the actual answer is, given that it's a very complex issue. What I do know is we absolutely must get a school risk assessment professional in to evaluate our buildings and give us recommendations of what we can do today to keep our children alive.
Clearly, this is part of an ongoing conversation, but thank you all for your opening comments on this discussion. Moving along, would you consider a shift in the high priority of low class size in order to shift funding to other school needs? We'll begin with Marchant, please.
So Winchester has some very amazing schools. We know what works, and the class sizes we have are effective in allowing students to access the curriculum. Now, our Winchester, our middle school, for example, we're looking at expanding the number of classrooms we have. The high school and the middle school share pretty much an equal amount of population, but McCall's square footage is half that of the new high school. So adding more children to these already crowded classrooms is going to hinder effective learning. We need to keep the class sizes we have and work on the facilities that we have.
Thank you. And candidate Money.
I do not think we should sacrifice our small class sizes. I think the student-teacher ratio in our town is good, which is one of the reasons people move here and raise their kids here. And class size and student-teacher ratio is absolutely a contributing factor to the success of students and to positive learning. I do think that as a town we have issues within our schools, for example, Lynch and Morocco, which are completely falling apart, and Lynch being a health hazard. And we need to find ways to fix our elementary schools and to improve our conditions without sacrificing our class size and our student-teacher ratio.
And candidate Vernalia, please.
I agree. I'm totally opposed to raising class sizes to save money. Teachers are the backbone of our wonderful schools, and one of the things we've discovered over the years is that we pay our teachers less than some of our peer districts. But our teachers, we still get teachers, and they still fight to come to Winchester, and we get to retain them. And part of what that is includes having a lower class size. So if we want to raise our class size, we are going to start seeing that we're going to need to, A, pay our teachers more, so we might not be saving money. And then it might not save money in the long run also because the teachers will not be able to give the students the attention that they deserve. We may find more students who do not need IEPs or 504s moving over that way. We may find that the, co-teaching no longer is feasible if we have larger class sizes. So I'm opposed as well.
Does anyone need to expand on your comments? Thank you. Over the past year, the school committee stated its intent to reduce the intense academic pressures of a highly competitive environment. What are some practical examples of how this can be accomplished? Dr. Money.
I think that one of the main issues we have, especially within the high school, is this hours and hours of busy work, homework that our students have to do every night. As an educator, I believe in homework, but I believe in homework with a purpose. I believe in homework that reinforces the material learned during the day or that develops critical thinking skills. I don't think that adding the 4 hours a night of pressure to these students is beneficial to them. I think that when looking at the stressors, particularly for our older kids in high school, we need to look at the child as a whole. We need to understand what it is that's stressing them. Is it the competitive environment of trying to get into the best possible college? Is it trying to be the best on their sports team? Is it trying to please their parents? Or is it the competitiveness that they put in within themselves? And we need to work with them, and we need to look at the child and work individually and make them be the most successful student that they can be.
Mr. Vernaglia?
Our students, especially at the middle and then the high school level, spend 6 to 7 hours a day in class with 4 or 5 minutes between periods, often having multiple tests. Then from the end of the day, they often go immediately to multiple hours of sports practice, then to clubs, only to come home, wolf something down, and try to accomplish 3 or 4 hours of homework. All that's not to say that any one of those aspects is the reason that our students are stressed, but when you add that all up, it ends up being about 14 hours of time. And I know most of you in the audience would be stressed if 14 hours of your day were devoted to that. I think homework is something we need to look at, but I think we need to look at it in the context of the bigger picture. The school policy is short on homework. It intentionally sends the onus to the school handbooks of what the school policy on homework should be. So I think that what we need to make sure is that the homework is meaningful, relevant, consistent across classrooms, and differentiated between learners, and I think that'll be a big part of reducing stress for our students.
Opportunity to expand or rebut, Dr. Money?
Get the answer.
Oh! So sorry.
That's all right.
Please.
Thank you. You know, homework doesn't have one solution, this issue about intense pressure from homework. Whether you're looking at the elementary level where homework isn't as useful in extending the curriculum or providing additional practice. Elementary school students need more free time to be creative and to develop other skills. But as you go into the higher levels, you can have a little bit more homework at each level. That's to say that we need to communicate what the purpose of homework being assigned is. Is it to extend the curriculum? Dr. Money stated earlier that she wants to see gifted education. Instead of dedicating resources we don't have to something, a formal gifted program, we can instead use homework to extend the curriculum or for others to create practice. But we have to have a dialogue in the community as to what our students are feeling like. I'm inspired by the Parkland High School students who learned to advocate for themselves within their school district and have now taken up a very important cause. So we need to teach our students to also advocate for themselves when it comes to the homework and other stressors in their lives.
Oh, thank you all. To expand on that, Dr. Money?
I would. I think that one of the policies we all talk about is, then both other candidates brought it up, is this concept of full inclusion. And to me, full inclusion means including all our kids, and that includes our gifted and talented children. We don't have any programs for them. We don't have any resources for them. We have advanced classes at the high school level, but my understanding of those classes is that it's just more work. It's not necessarily what a gifted and talented program would include. I believe that if we're going to talk about full inclusion, we need to include the gifted and talented kids as well and develop some programs for them at the elementary level and beyond.
Mr. Vernaglia.
Sort of going off what the other two candidates have mentioned, we have the co-teach program, which has been being expanded over time at the elementary level. And this is a great program, and my daughter was in it when she was in 4th grade. And it was 3 teachers, 1 a special ed teacher and 2 general ed teachers for 2 classrooms. And what they were able to do is they were able to break up, say, math into 3 groups, different levels. So this actually helped everyone. It helped not just the kids who need a little bit more help, but enabled those who are a little bit faster to go a little bit faster. So strictly speaking, it is not a gifted and talented program. However, it does serve to differentiate the learning, and that's what our goal is, to differentiate the learner for all the different learners in our schools.
Ms. Marchand.
The purpose of public education for us is to help students access the curriculum. And so a lot of the models that we're seeing in our schools, including the co-teaching, is about helping all learners access the curriculum. We are a resource-rich community. However, our schools are run on very tight budgets. So first, we have to look at what is mandated, and special education is mandated. Once we establish that we are fully funding, which we are, fully funding our special education, that we're bringing in enough staff to handle the need, then we can get creative with other desires, our wish list for the district.
All right. What program improvements do you think are necessary at the schools for our students to have 21st century skills? Mr. Vanalia.
I'm thoroughly impressed with the 21st century skills that are being taught to our children right now. Going over just a few of those, my daughter, who's in middle school, came home one day, and we have a 3D printer that none of us really know what to do with, and one day she came home and sat down at the 3D printer and started making stuff on it. She didn't learn this because we taught it to her. She learned it because it was taught to her in the middle school in the technology class. So now both of my kids are using the 3D printer, which otherwise was a large paperweight. We have tech classes at the high school, which are amazing. I'm actually mentoring a young woman for her Gold Award in Girl Scouts. She just received her Gold Award. She's doing a STEM certificate at the high school. Thoroughly impressed with the work that they do there, and she's going to use that STEM certificate to help her get into college. She's applying right now. She's got into one. She's waiting to hear from more. If anything, I guess what I could say is that the technology and 21st education that I think is what you're referring to probably is not as strong at the elementary level, and that's where I would probably follow up on when I speak next.
Ms. Marchand.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. What program improvements do you think are necessary at the schools for our students to have 21st century skills?
So technology is a tool. It isn't the end-all be-all. We need that tool to give us access to information quicker. But what we can do is broaden the world, culture, and language program to the younger students, because we want them to understand that there is a global world outside of Winchester that they can access, that they can engage with. That's where technology comes in. I would love the opportunity for my elementary school students, kids, my own children, to be able to Skype, for example, with students in Hong Kong and understand how they're learning and what their day-to-day is like. We need to broaden that understanding by also teaching compassion and critical thinking. Those are skills they need to become future leaders, future innovators. And so those are some of the first priorities, I would think, for the curriculum.
And Dr. Money.
I'm actually fairly impressed with what the high school does to support our students in technology, but like I think Brian mentioned, I would like to see much more of this at the elementary and middle school level. I think that part of a long-term plan as we look at redoing Lynch and Morocco and rebuilding these buildings is we should most definitely emphasize on technology and how we can incorporate that into the new buildings. As a solution for right now, if elected to the school committee, I would set up a task force to see how we can do more to provide more technology at the elementary and middle school level.
This is your opportunity to add another 30 seconds to your comments, Mr. Bernalia.
Thank you. So I agree that I think that the elementary level is probably where science, technology, engineering, and math is least focused on, and there's good reasons for that. When I was a graduate student, I was a National Science Foundation teaching fellow, and one of the things I did is I went into fifth grades with help of professional educators as well, and we brought in engineering curriculum into the fifth grade. This was unfortunately out in Stowe, not in Winchester. I would love to see such a curriculum developed. I mean, that would be in the hands of our professional educators, not the school committee, but that would be something I would love to see developed.
And Ms. Marchand.
I want to commend our local organization, WIFI, the Winchester Foundation for Educational Excellence. They have really pushed our district forward in the technology question. I look forward to collaborating with them further on what it means to have innovation within our schools.
And Dr. Money.
I think along those lines, another focus other than adding technology to the lower levels of schools is we may want to think about how we can use technology to help our high school students become better prepared for college and make them much more prepared for the skills that are required in the 21st century. Again, this would include more funding for science, technology, engineering, and math, and gifted and talented programs. Once again, I believe in education when you have to start at the very first level and work your way up to have success.
Thank you. And now we are moving into our final question. What is your number one priority for the school committee to accomplish during your 3-year term? Beginning with Ms. Marchand.
Not only do I want to have the opportunity to support our teachers, I think they are very hardworking and not comparably paid, but I also want to focus on modernizing the curriculum. I think that's really how we can address not only bringing forth our excellent students, but also addressing their social and emotional well-being. I think if we start looking at that, whether it's bringing the language program down to the younger students or bringing in technology, those are the ways we will be able to meet more than one of our goals, especially under the strategic visioning work that was just done. It meets all of those requirements.
And Dr. Money, your top priority to accomplish?
The Lynch and Morocco elementary facilities have been neglected for decades. My family has personally experienced the health hazard conditions of Lynch, and through my own investigation, I have learned that a number of students and teachers have also been sick from the building. As a parent, I took the initiative to arrange the first complete air quality assessment in nearly 2 decades at Lynch. I have gone out to the community and talked with other parents. Morocco leaks when it rains. Children have to be shuffled from classroom to classroom so they do not get wet. I feel strongly that Morocco should be next for a full IAQ assessment from the State Health Department. We cannot continue to let our children and our teachers jeopardize their health while we wait for approved funding from the state and planning efforts that will take at least 5 to 10 years. We cannot have our children's well-being jeopardized for yet another generation. We need action, and we need it now, and that would be my first priority.
Mr. Vernalia.
I'm going to cheat a little bit and have 2 priorities because I believe that we can multitask. I believe that we can't just do one thing. I believe that we need to work on improving the wellness of our children. We've talked about it tonight, so I won't talk more about that, but I want to make sure that it's clear that's one of my highest priorities. The second of my highest priorities is school funding. We are in a situation with Proposition 2.5 where our funding of our schools is unsustainable. We need to have a Proposition 2.5 override if we want to continue to fund our schools. I don't want to talk about the alternative, but the alternative would be grim. So I'd rather say what we can do with an override. What we can do is continue to fund our students, continue to fund low class sizes. We can continue to offer the languages and the technology, science, technology, and education we're offering. We can potentially expand world languages. That was something that the school committee wanted to do this year. The funding is not there. The school committee asked for they asked for more than they are likely to get since the budget has not been finalized, but it included world languages, and that was not something that they could include. So I would say those 2 things, wellness and school funding.
Ms. Marchand, another 30 seconds.
Thank you. Despite the age of Lynch's building, it is one of the most vibrant community centers we have. It is regularly rented out on the weekends and the evenings. It also has a very engaged, amazing parent group. I'm very proud of our Lynchies, and I'm very proud of the administration for looking out for the health and safety of our students at all times. No one is disagreeing that it is an old building, but it is a safe building. We need a sensible approach, a fiscally responsible approach to rebuilding Lynch and Morocco.
Dr. Money.
I would just like to rebuttal Zina's statement. Lynch is not a safe building. Lynch has been making my child sick for 2 years. Lynch has been making multiple teachers sick for 2 years. This is fact. This is not up for debate. While I agree that Lynch is a wonderful, vibrant community, and I'm thrilled that my child attends it as a school, I am not talking about Lynch the community. I am talking about Lynch the building. And something most definitely needs to be done so that the children in that building and the teachers that teach there do not continue to jeopardize their health.
Mr. Vernaglia.
Well, I'm just going to focus again on school funding because I think that's so important. We've seen the number of students in our schools increase over 1,000 students in the past 10 years. And we expect that the school budget will increase as it needs to. Think about if we saw an increase in the miles of roads in town increased by 50%, we would need a lot more money for the DPW. Or if we saw the number of house fires increase, we would need a lot more money for the fire department. So I think we need to keep in mind that the school number of students is growing and the funding needs to grow with it.
Thank you all. Now we're presenting their closing statements in reverse order of the opening ones. And so we will start with Ms. Marchand. 1 minute.
Thank you to the moderator and audience. I ask for your vote on March 27th and look forward to collaborating with parents, community leaders, and school personnel on strengthening our schools and fulfilling the promise of our students. Together, we can advocate for our students and schools while at the same time helping our students find their voice and advocate for themselves. Thank you.
Mr. Vernaglia.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, you, the audience here, for listening, my two fellow candidates for running, and my family and friends for supporting me through this campaign. On March 27th, 2/5 of the school committee will turn over, losing a combined 15 years of experience. Whichever of us you elect, we will have a steep learning curve, and it will be important that we get up to speed quickly. I've spent many years looking at school budgets critically as a member of the Finance Committee, 3 years serving on the Education Subcommittee. I've spent many years assessing the capital needs of the school department as a member of the Capital Planning Committee and on the McCall Working Group. I've spent many years working closely with the principals and teachers on the school improvement plans while serving on the school councils at each of my daughter's 3 schools. I've spent many years working with the parents and students on the McCall Parents Association co-president and as Lincoln School volunteer. And I've sat literally in the same classrooms our children now sit, and on a few occasions with the very same teachers as a proud Winchester Public School graduate. If you entrust me with your vote on March 27th, I will be ready to contribute substantively on day one. I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you.
Dr. Money?
You've heard a lot of opinions today, and I believe that everyone has the interests of the children of Winchester at heart. What I offer as a professional academic, someone who has earned a doctorate of education, someone who advises universities on student success, is the framework and the perspective to elevate Winchester school systems. If we look at neighboring towns, if we look at the top performing districts in Massachusetts, we see that their school committees are filled with active working educators. Only they have the perspective and the framework to which to set goals and policies for academic excellence. And quite frankly, we are lacking that in Winchester. I am putting my name forward, and I ask for your vote because I hope to improve that ratio for this town, because our children deserve that. Thank you.
So we want to thank all of our candidates. The Winchester voters have tough choices, but you're blessed with having contested races for both Planning Board and School Committee. We particularly wants to thank the candidates for their willingness to serve the community by running for office and participating in today's forum. We are also grateful to WinCam for filming the program and making it available for rebroadcast and on demand. To all of you who are registered voters, of course, we want you to please vote in the Winchester town election March 27th. Polls open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Remember, from the League of Women Voters to you, democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you all.